It wasn't just a wall, it was a system. A brutal, complex, and deadly system designed not just to divide a city, but to imprison half of it. When we picture the Berlin Wall, most of us probably imagine a single, long concrete barrier. But the reality was far more sinister. For 28 years, it was the most potent symbol of the Cold War, a scar carved right through the heart of Germany. To truly understand its power and its horror, we need to look beyond the concrete and see the entire machine. The story begins in the dead of night, on August 13, 1961. Under the orders of the German Democratic Republic, or GDR, East German soldiers and workers descended upon the border between East and West Berlin. In a single night, they unspooled miles of barbed wire and tore up the streets, severing tram lines and cutting off families. The official reason given by the East German government was that it was an anti-fascist protection rampart, designed to keep Western spies and saboteurs out. But everyone knew the real reason: to stop its own citizens from leaving. Before the wall went up, Berlin was a gaping hole in the Iron Curtain. Since the end of World War II, Germany had been divided into 4 zones, and so had its capital, Berlin. The city itself sat deep inside Soviet-controlled East Germany. By 1961, over 3.5 million East Germans, about 20% of the entire population, had fled to the west through Berlin, seeking freedom and economic opportunity. This mass exodus was a humiliating brain drain for the communist regime, losing doctors, engineers, and skilled workers. The wall was an act of desperation to stop the bleeding. So what did this system actually look like? It was a formidable obstacle course of death. First, you'd encounter an initial wall or fence on the East German side. Beyond that lay the infamous Death Strip, a wide-open area that varied in width from 30 to 150 meters. This no-man's land was a death trap. It was lined with floodlights that turned night into day, making any movement instantly visible. Scattered throughout the strip were tripwire alarms that would trigger flares or sirens, alerting guards. There were also beds of sharp metal spikes, sometimes called Stalin's carpet, hidden just below the surface, and long runs for specially trained guard dogs. And then there was the control strip, a wide, perfectly raked bed of sand or gravel. Its purpose was chillingly simple: to show the footprints of anyone who made it that far, and to make it impossible to hide. Parallel to this sandy strip ran a patrol road, allowing guards in vehicles to race to any breach, and overseeing it all were the watchtowers. There were over 300 of them dotted along the wall's length, staffed around the clock by guards who had orders to shoot to kill anyone attempting to cross. They were authorized, even encouraged, to use lethal force. Finally, after surviving all of that, you would reach the main event, the wall itself. This wasn't the crude barrier erected in 1961. Over the years, it was heavily fortified. By the late 1970s, it was mostly made of reinforced concrete segments, what was known as the Grenzmauer 75, or Border Wall 75. Each segment stood 3.6 meters high. That's nearly 12 feet. And to make it even harder to scale, the top was crowned with a smooth, wide pipe designed to make it impossible to get a handhold. This entire apparatus didn't just surround West Berlin. It completely encircled it, running for 155 kilometers, or about 96 miles. It cut through streets, parks, and even buildings. In the early days, apartments that stood directly on the borderline had their windows and doors on the ground floor bricked up. Eventually, these buildings were evacuated and demolished to create a clearer field of fire for the guards. The city was literally torn in two. So could anyone cross legally? Yes, but it was incredibly difficult and rare for East Germans. There were a handful of official checkpoints, the most famous being Checkpoint Charlie, which was designated for foreigners and Allied military personnel. For East Germans, getting permission to visit the West was a bureaucratic nightmare. usually only granted to pensioners who the state figured were less likely to stay. Any crossing was a tense affair, with mirrors used to check under cars and guards conducting thorough, intimidating searches. Despite the terrifying odds, people never stopped trying to escape. Over the 5,000 people who attempted it, many were successful, using ingenious methods, hiding in secret car compartments, flying over in homemade hot air balloons, digging tunnels underneath, or even swimming across the city's canals and rivers. But the risk was immense. At least 140 people are confirmed to have died at the Berlin Wall, shot by guards, drowned, or killed in accidents during their escape attempts. Each one was a tragedy, born of a desperate desire for freedom. The wall stood for 28 long, painful years. It was a physical manifestation of the ideological divide that defined the 20th century. But by the late 1980s, the winds of change were blowing across Eastern Europe. Protests were gaining momentum, and the Soviet Union's grip was weakening. On the evening of November 9, 1989, something incredible happened. At a routine press conference, an East German official, Günter Schabowski, was asked about new travel regulations. Confused and ill-prepared, he mistakenly announced that East Germans could cross the border, effective immediately. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, massive crowds of euphoric East Berliners converged on the checkpoints. The guards, overwhelmed and without clear orders, had no choice but to open the gates. That night was one of the most joyous in modern history. People streamed into West Berlin, weeping, cheering, and embracing strangers. People from both sides climbed onto the wall, dancing and chipping away at the concrete with hammers and chisels. The Mauerfall, the fall of the wall, was a spontaneous, beautiful, and peaceful revolution. It wasn't just the end of a physical barrier. It was the end of an era. The system, once thought to be impenetrable, had crumbled in a single night under the sheer weight of people's demand for freedom. The Berlin Wall was a monument to division, but its fall became an everlasting symbol of unity and the uncrushable power of the human spirit. It serves as a stark reminder of what happens when ideology tries to wall people in, and the extraordinary things that can happen when those walls finally come down. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this look into history interesting, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world. See you in the next one.